So we're absolutely delighted to welcome some key Scottish Government people here today to talk about the National Care Service. Obviously, it's been billed as one of the biggest reforms to the public sector in Scotland in a long time. And we're very, very keen on making sure that as many social enterprises as possible get as many opportunities as they can to really take part, to really understand what the National Care Service is about, to understand the opportunities available. And just to really, find out some of the basics, I think, sometimes as well. I think a lot of people are still unsure about what the National Care Service is in the sector. So it'd be good to really clarify some of the issues as well, I think. And obviously after the session, you can get in touch with me or Scottish Government colleagues in terms of finding out more as well. So I'll kick off just now by introducing Colin and Luke from the Scottish Government, who will give us a presentation on the National Care Service. And over to you, Colin.
All right, thank you, Duncan. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting us here. I'm Colin McKnight. I'm part of the Scottish Government's National Care Service Division. I'm going to start off this morning just by giving a short overview of where we are with the National Care Service Bill, some of the key points that we are working on. And then I'll be passing over to my colleague, Luke, who is going to talk about how people can get involved with the development of the National Care Service through the co-design approach that we're taking through lived experience, expert panels, and the stakeholder register, and by any other means as well. And then we're happy to open up and chat, discuss, answer any questions that we can that you might have, and just sort of keep you posted on where we are, really. So Georgia has kindly agreed to take care of the presentation for me, which is great. So Georgia, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up now, and I'll get started. Okay. Yeah, we can see that. Thanks, Georgia. Okay, so that's the introduction. I'm Colin. I'm part of what's called the National Care Service national team within the division. As you can imagine, the programme's growing at quite a pace just now, and we have different teams working on different aspects of it. My team particularly is looking at the national as opposed to the local aspects of it. George, if you wouldn't mind just moving on to the second slide, I'll talk through some of the background. I'll talk through it really quickly because I'm sure this is not new information. I'm sure that you're all very well aware of it already. But the independent review of adult social care that was commissioned in September 2020 and published in February 2021 recommended the creation, the establishment of a National Care Service. And the Scottish Government committed to a consultation being launched within the first 100 days in office last year, excuse me, and then to the creation or the establishment of a National Care Service by the end of this parliamentary term. You'll know already that although the review was a review of excuse me, adult social care, that the approach that's been taken by the government goes further than that. It also looks at children's services as well and justice services, although I should say straight away that no decision has been taken on those, but the National Care Service has been designed with those in mind should the decision be taken to include those. If you could move on, Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I've taken out some of the slides that are now out of date, but just to jump ahead to where we are with the timeline at the bill. If you're familiar with it, the bill was published back in June the 20th, June 21st. Then it's what we call a framework bill. So it's you might look at it and think, well, there's not very much detail in that. It's been published in such a way so that it can be co-designed with people that use social care services, people that access them, people that deliver them, unpaid carers, etc. So the bill allows for secondary legislation to be added following the outcome of that co-design. So it's not too detailed at the moment. It doesn't have all the details in it. It's open to allow for more to be added or not, as the case may be. From September, we moved to stage 1 of the bill, and during this period that we're in just now, the run up to the end of the year, the various committees in Scottish Parliament are examining the bill and holding hearings at which they will speak with Scottish Government officials, with MSPs, with the Minister, and with key stakeholders from the social care sector to gather evidence. Quite a few committees interested in the National Care Service. The lead committees, the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee, but also local government, as you can imagine, are very interested in it. The Children's and Young People's Committee, Education, Finance Committee, as you can imagine as well, has got a great interest in it as well. So there's quite a lot of that ongoing at the moment. Everything that's said and answered and asked at the committee sessions are available for people, anyone, to watch online at Scottish Parliament website. And when we move out of this, this period, this part of stage 1, after the new year, at that point then Parliament will take a vote on the general principles of the bill, and we'll know at that point where we go from there. So that's the stage that we're at right now. We'll move on. Okay, just a few words here. I won't read through it word for word. This, I suppose I've already explained that it's a framework bill, that it's been created, allowing us to make some decisions as we continue down the co-design process. Okay. So just to talk for a few minutes about some of the groups that already exist. The first lived experience group, I think, that was established was a social covenant steering group, and that's a group that's made up, I think there's about 25 people that are on that group. They're all either people who use social care services, people who care for people, or people who deliver them. And that group was established right at the start. That was also part of the first 100-day activities. It was established right at the start. I think originally the remit was to hold the government to account. I'm not really quite sure what that means though, and I don't think the group really knew what that meant. So that's kind of been slightly reworded now, and it's to challenge really where the process that the Scottish Government continues to take in this, and to ensure that we are true to our word in making sure that the voices of lived experience and are included throughout the design of this, and that we are keeping the whole thing people-centred, people-focused, and the Social Covenant Steering Group will challenge the government if they think that activities or actions are underway that don't meet those principles. Okay, thanks, Georgie. The second group that has already been established is a key stakeholder reference group that is made up of stakeholders. That's made up of experts in the field who, again, will come in, scrutinise, look at the proposition, look at what the government is saying publicly about what we hope to achieve and how we hope to build the National Care Service. And again, I suppose, challenge wherever they think this isn't the right thing to do. The key stakeholder reference group is different from the stakeholder register that Luke will talk about in a few minutes. So just to make that clear from the start. And that group, again, I'm not sure of the numbers, but I think there's about 25 or 30 people from different stakeholder groups that are that attend that and that meet monthly for that group. All right. The design school, it's not a school as such. We don't turn up in a classroom or anything like that. It's the name that's given to the programme, really for working with people to achieve the co-design vision. The first thing, or one of the early things that it will be concentrating on, is the lived experience experts panel, and making sure that we set those are set up properly, and that the right people have been invited to join it, that we've got the right kind of variety range of people on those lived experience panels, so that we can hear from all different sectors of society when we're designing the National Care Service, and that it's not confined to kind of a more restricted group of people or the type of groups that have been involved in things in the past. We want to reach out to as many people as possible, and to do that we need to make sure that those panels are accessible, that they're welcoming, they're supportive, etc., and that they're actually achieving something. In the design school, it will also run sessions with those organisations that have signed up for the stakeholder register. I'll let Luke tell you a bit more about them, but those are already underway. There may be people on the call that are familiar with that already. Okay, thanks, Georgie. Okay, so very briefly, I don't want to steal Luke's thunder, but the lived experience panels I've mentioned, it's a group of people that will help design the National Care Service. It's up to anyone to decide which of the different parts of the co-design that they want to take part in. We have sort of different themes that the lived experience panels will focus on. People may decide that they're more interested in one of those themes than another, and so can pick and choose. It will be, excuse me, something's just appeared on the screen now. It will be made up of those people that have experience of accessing or using social care, lived experience. And just to repeat what I've said earlier on, that's our way of ensuring that as we build the National Care Service, that we've got the right voices involved in helping us to do that. Okay. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, the stakeholder register, that's another way for delivery partners to get involved. People can sign up to a stakeholder register to join meetings to discuss ways in which they would like to contribute towards the development of the NCS. Obviously, we had our consultation last year, to which we received well over 1,000 responses, many of those from individuals, but many from stakeholders and from organisations as well. There's a great deal of information in those that we've used. But of course, as time passes and people want to contribute, want to contribute further as they understand more about what's happening with the National Care Service, they want to be a part of that. So that's another means for stakeholders to get involved. Okay. And the next thing, the last thing that I wanted to mention was the NCS forum. I don't know if anybody here was involved or attended the NCS forum. It happened on the 3rd of October at a concert hall in Perth, and it was the first of an annual event that we'll have throughout the creation of the National Care Service. It's an opportunity for people to get together to speak in person to ministers, so both the Minister and the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care were in attendance at that one. 300 people joined, 300 joined online, so fairly a significant amount of people. There will be another one next year. We'll continue to advertise it. If you didn't get a chance, if you didn't know about it, if this is news to you, then that's a marker for your calendar for next year if it's something that you'd like to be involved in and have an opportunity to meet other people that are interested in the National Care Service and understand what their thoughts, comments, concerns, etc. might be about that. We're in the process right now of providing a written summary of what happened, what was said, what was decided, and what came out of that forum. And that written report will be available, I think, before the end of the year. Okay. So where we are now over the next few months, we just continue. It's really about engagement just now. All different parts of the programme are trying to engage with as many stakeholders as they can, and get, now that we're back in a position where we can meet like this, and we can also meet face to face with people, we're trying to create as many opportunities as we can. As it says there, we'll build on that. We'll build on that forum that happened on the 3rd of October. But really, it's about getting out, speaking to people, understanding what the concerns are, and ensuring that as many people as possible know what the opportunities are to get more involved. You see a little bit there at the bottom about including rural areas. We're very mindful of the fact that we need to be speaking to people in all parts of the country, not just across the Central Belt, not just in the big cities or whatever, but this National Care Service will affect people regardless of where they live. So we need to make those efforts as well. Okay. So again, I won't talk through the whole lot here, but basically we're at stage one. I've mentioned already that the committees of Parliament are taking evidence just now. They've taken written evidence already this year. They're now taking oral evidence. You can watch any of that, all of it, if you want, at the Scottish Parliament website. Georgia, you're free to share this presentation after the call with anybody that wants to access those links. At the next stage, MSPs will have a chance to propose amendments to the bill. That's stage 2. If you don't have another means of communicating something that you'd like to see amended, then anyone can get in touch with their MSP and ask them to propose an amendment to the bill. And finally, towards the summer of next year, Parliament will vote on whether or not to pass the National Care Service Bill. Okay. Okay, sorry, that's a bit wordy. I didn't mean to have so many wordy views there. I think it's actually there's nothing particularly new in that slide from what I've said. Just to let you know that there was a consultation last year, as you'll know, by the Scottish Government, but there was also a call for written a consultation for written responses once the bill was published, that ran over the summer this year. If you'd like to see what other organisations are saying about the National Care Service in principle, and then about the National Care Service Bill, you can go on and see what other people's concerns or thoughts about it are. Okay, I don't think there's anything else new in there, so we'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, excuse me. So just to let you know about some of the other material that's out there available for people to read. We published the bill. We also published a series of documents, including a policy memorandum, a financial memorandum, impact assessments, a statement of benefits, etc. It's a lot on the Scottish Government website. You may have already seen it all. If you haven't, it's available. There's also a video campaign featuring the voices of lived experience, where we've been out to speak to people who volunteered to be filmed talking about their experience of social care and what they would like to see change, whether that's through a National Care Service or not, just, you know, what they think needs to change in social care in Scotland. Those are all published on our website, which is gov.scot, National Care Service, and across the different social media platforms as well. There's also a National Care Service blog, and I'll link to it there so that you can see updates on a more frequent basis. Okay. I think this is the final slide now. So just some means of getting in touch. So you can follow our Twitter account, which is at ScotGovNCS. I think it's updated fairly frequently. Whenever I look at it, there seems to be something new on it. So and I do look at it fairly frequently. So that will keep you up to date with things that are happening. But if you do at any point have any specific questions, anything that you want to share, any comments that you want to make, or anything, and you don't feel there's a particularly an outlet to do so, we do have a very well managed mailbox as well, nationalcareservice@gov.scot. Please feel free to drop us a line at any time, whether it's to share your views or whether it's to ask a question or for any reason whatsoever. It's manned from 9 to 5 every day, so we're pretty good at getting back in touch with people, I think. So please do get in touch with us whenever you can. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. I'm going to pass back now to Duncan and Georgie. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Colin. Really, really good summary there. I think of the National Care Service is something I'm sure lots of our members will have questions about as well. So now I'll just hand over to Luke to talk about the lived experience.
Thanks very much, Duncan. So I'm just going to build a little bit on some of the points that Colin made, and particularly around the commitment to undertaking co-design in terms of informing what the future National Care Service could and should look like. Obviously, the programme of work that's being undertaken it is by very nature quite broad and definitely very complex. One of the things that we're very keen to do is to demystify some of that complexity and to make sure that for people who are interested in engaging in co-design in whatever way they're able to do so, that those routes to engagement are clear, and that we're able to give some clear direction in terms of what kind of conversations they might be able to participate in, so that people can kind of get a sense of how they might be able to interface with the programme of work. In order to do that, we've set up two primary routeways for participation, both of which Colin mentioned in his presentation. So the first one is the Lived Experience Experts Panel. This is for people who want to register an interest in engaging in co-design activities on the basis of their own personal lived experience. And the other one is the Stakeholder Register, which is an opportunity for organisations that would like to seek opportunities for involvement in co-design activities to register a single point of contact in their organisation, and also some information about their areas of interest as well. Both of those routeways are now live. They were open since just before the forum that Colin mentioned. It's probably just worth a brief point on the Lived Experience Expert Panel. The use of the word panel, I think, can be sometimes slightly confusing because it gives a sense of a small group. And that's not really the intent here. Probably the closest parallel I think I can draw is for anybody who is aware of the work around the Social Security programme and Social Security Agency. They set up an experience panel. And that's really the way in which we're using the word panel here. That experience panel had a few thousand people on it, and we're expecting the numbers to be quite large in our lived experience expert panel as well. We've already had good levels of sign up, and sign up is continuing as we have engagements like this and continue to promote the opportunity. So both those routeways are open. The way in which you would sign up if you or people you know or represent are interested in either of those options is via the website that Colin mentioned earlier on. So there is links on there. However, we also have helplines that are available and open for people who either need some support in completing those forms, have any questions about the forms themselves, or would like somebody to do it on their behalf because they're not digitally enabled or require additional support. The process of signing up for both of those, and particularly for people who are signing up for the Lived Experience Expert Panel, the process is one where there is a form to fill in. The form asks and collates some information about people's personal circumstances, which allows us to ensure that over time we're having a breadth of voices and engagement and diversity of people who are involved in the process. For example, as Colin mentioned earlier on, we're very keen to make sure that we are hearing from people in rural areas as well as hearing from people in the Central Belt. And the same would apply for a whole range of other dynamics as well, whether it's different people's experiences or ethnicity or age or other demographic criteria. The other part of the process is that as people sign up to register an interest, we're also asking them to register an interest in one or more of 5 initial design themes. These themes are ones that were derived through analysis of the consultation that took place earlier the year that Colin mentioned, and are kind of very broad programmatic areas of work. As I said, obviously the programme of work itself is broad and complex, and we try to find ways to allow people to understand how they can best link in with areas of interest that they might have. Apologies, I don't have a slide with these, and I will talk them through, but I can also send them in written form afterwards, Georgie, if it's helpful to get these out. But the 5 initial themes are information sharing to improve care support. That's the first one. Valuing the workforce. Making sure your voice is heard, realising rights and responsibilities, and keeping care support local. So all fairly large, meaty thematic areas, as you can see. But what it's now allowing us to do is that, because we've had pretty good initial sign up through those 2 routeways, we're able to say that, we understand that we've got a constituency of people who said not only do they want to engage in co-design, but they want to engage on these particular themes, which will allow us to then connect those individuals and organisations to the various work streams that are being planned or are underway across the whole NCS programme, so that people can engage on topics that are of interest and relevance to them. In terms of where we're at the moment, those, as I say, both of those routeways are open. We've had a good initial sign up, and we're keen to continue to promote those. They won't be the only routes to participation, but they are probably most initially straightforward. Over time, there will obviously be plenty of other opportunities as well, but that allows us to at least have a bit of a central view on who's interested and on what's the kind of the experience that they might be able to bring into these conversations as we explore these topics together. We have the design school team set up now, as Colin mentioned. So this is a team that is providing kind of wraparound support, both internally for Scottish officials who are thinking about how to plan co-design activities, and for organisations and individuals who are looking to engage perhaps for the first time in this kind of environment. We've been going through a series of welcome events for people who've signed up so far. I've had a few hundred people through those to date. Those will continue probably to the end of this calendar year at least, possibly beyond. Those have been really helpful for us to start to get a bit of a sense of what people's areas of interest are, but also particularly whether there are specific accessibility requirements that we need to be mindful of in order to support people to engage with future planning and sessions as they get set up. And Colin also mentioned the Social Covenant Steering Group that's been established for a while now. It's a really important group for us, and the role that they are kind of moving into now is one where, yes, all of this co-design activity is starting to take place, but they're helping us almost co-design the co-design, if you like. They're helping us think about how we approach this work in a way that ensures that we are being as inclusive and accessible as possible. We are being mindful of the needs and requirements of people who are giving up their time and efforts to engage in the process. It's been really, really helpful to date. So as just a brief example of some of the work that we've done with them, that group was really helpful in allowing us to think about how we would establish the lived experience expert panel. The name actually came from them. The idea of lived experience experts was one that they proposed. But thinking about how we make sure that those channels are accessible and inclusive, and thinking through some of the information that we collate to make sure that we get that balance right between having a good level of understanding of the people who are expressing an interest to engage, whilst also obviously not asking information that's not appropriate or necessary for the process. So that kind of engagement will continue, and as we start to move beyond the kind of the welcome sessions into co-design activities through into early part of next year, that group will be really helpful in keeping us right around some of the planning and activities that are taking place. So hopefully that's helpful and gives you a bit of a sense of some of the immediate activity that's taking place. The two major primary routeways to participation that are available at the moment, and some of the kind of thinking and planning that's gone into those. So I'll pause there.
That's great, thanks, Luke. Yeah, it strikes me it's a very inclusive and collaborative approach I think that's been taken in terms of the National Care Service. That's something I think, you know, certainly social enterprises will welcome, and you know, the many opportunities to get involved. So there's certainly opportunities there. I'll just hand over just now to Andrew Douglas from All Strong Scotland CIC, just to give a social enterprise perspective on the National Care Service. Andrew.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, everybody. So I've just been asked to say a few words as perhaps being hopefully representative of a smaller organisation working locally. So I think the National Care Service Bill sounds like it's obviously in its early stages and is obviously taking care to include the voices of lived experience. But I suppose just from my own organisation's concern, is in the move towards a national model aiming for consistency, that kind of is in danger of perhaps maybe not ignoring, but how will the kind of the value that smaller locally delivering social enterprises and third sector organizations can still link into the more formal statutory services, seeing as we're in a position to be able to adapt to what's happening on the ground, to respond very quickly. And often, and again, it fits in with the national goal of having a culture of continuous improvement. Often social enterprises who are working on the ground day in, day out in direct delivery, we're able to include the voices of lived experience as we go and make adaptations almost in real time. And furthermore, a lot of social enterprises and of course community groups, charities, grassroots organizations, they're formed and their services are designed and delivered with the voices of lived experience fully ingrained in there already. So I think that's a concern that I fully appreciate the many panels, groups and things and opportunities to participate in designing this national care service and the bill. So it is just knowing how will that link in. Just to take ourselves as an example, we work with at any given time about 10 local partners, some charities, some hospitals, things like that. And we also do, and I know a lot of enterprises do, especially when they work collaboratively, we do provide that kind of whole of life, very much person-centered support. And again, in looking to a national model with consistency as a core kind of goal within that, how do you account for what social enterprises are doing locally, which of course isn't going to be consistent throughout the country, and what's available in one area might not be available in the other, and just to offer the people that this bill and service is aiming to support that choice. If it is available locally, can it be included, and will there be that kind of funding, support and recognition for impactful work happening locally? Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Really, either Colin or Luke like to come back on any raise there?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Look, if I'll jump in if you don't mind. Thanks, and those are points obviously that you know that are shared amongst people. I think the way that we're looking at it just now is, yeah, there will be sort of that national accountability that helps us improve standards sort of across the whole social work and social care landscape. And I think for things like improving national standards, a drive for kind of sort of better paying conditions for staff, etc., then at national level we expect that the NCS will allow for that. But that doesn't mean that there still has to be a balance struck between sort of securing that national consistency of service quality, but allowing the local care boards. So when we talk about the national care service, I suppose what we're really talking about is care boards and the Scottish Government. So there will still be what is proposed, that local care boards will have that kind of flexibility to work with organisations locally, including social enterprises, to sort of design and co-design services that reflect sort of local circumstances, and that will be a priority. I think it's clear that at local level that work will still be very much required. So while we go through this process just now of co-design, I expect that's going to come out quite a lot as we're speaking to people. In terms of the funding question, yes, I'm not really sure that I can answer that just now. I don't think that I kind of have enough information to answer what the situation will be on that, but certainly in terms of, as you were talking about, working locally with the voices of lived experience, really to implement changes on the ground as and when they're required, as opposed to having to go through a national structure to get those approved. The aspiration is that there will still be the flexibility there for local care boards to do that. But as I said, that is a point that's shared amongst lots of people, because I've been at groups like this where we've heard that before. So I expect as we go through the co-design process that will be prominent throughout.
Can I just add a little bit onto that comment? Thank you, that's helpful. I think, Andrew, part of the answer to me as well is ensuring that we've got appropriate routes to engage in the process of co-design set up from the beginning, because that's about providing the opportunities for organisations, individuals to make the point and similar points to the ones you exactly just made there. And I'm hopeful that through the kind of two initial ways that I was discussing in the piece earlier on, that gives us an opportunity to do that. We've already seen, you know, some really good sign up from small grassroots organisations, some of the stakeholder register, as well as kind of larger and national organisations as well, which is great. And there have been instances there where we have seen sign up for organisations that perhaps haven't either had capacity or perhaps not been involved previously in the opportunities to feed into the larger consultation that took place before. So there is an opportunity there to engage. And also for organisations where you are representing people with lived experience, they can also engage on their own basis as well. So it really does hopefully go right down in terms of giving, you know, across the whole spectrum of opportunities for people to engage, routes in for people who perhaps maybe haven't had opportunities to engage in process like this in quite the same way before.
Thanks both of you. That's really useful, I think. Andrew, is anything else you want to, any other comments you want to add in response to that?
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I think it is just, I do appreciate that there is definitely the opportunity to get involved in having the voice heard in the design and delivery. Again, it's just the concern was just that once the design is kind of created, that the actual delivery of it won't filter all the way down to that local level. But again, as Colin mentioned, the care boards will have hopefully that flexibility to have all sizes of organisations involved. So that's helpful. Thank you.
We can certainly keep up the conversation as well between various organisations and the Scottish Government as well. So I'm certainly happy to continue facilitating these discussions as well. So we've actually got plenty of time for questions now. So if anybody has any particular questions for our colleagues in the Scottish Government, then do feel free to unmute and come on camera and ask your question. Alternatively, you can post in the chat and I can ask it for you if you want. If anybody has any questions, please do. Mark McDonald from Scottish Autism has got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'll come in with a few starters for 10. I suppose from our perspective, Scottish Autism, we're obviously a large national charity. We have, I think, a foot in a number of camps in relation to the National Care Service. We obviously provide supported living and care services. We also have a number of social enterprises. I see Kim on the call, and she was at a visit at one of our social enterprises, Gartini Nurseries in Coles Naughton on Monday. I suppose there are three things that I would appreciate views on, or at least to be considered as part of this. I think the first is around consistency of commissioning. I think for those of us who operate across more than one local authority area, it's extremely frustrating that commissioning of services can often vary, not necessarily significantly, but enough to require increased workload for team members to fulfill the commissioning requirements for services. So thinking about how a national care service might drive not just parity in terms of standards, but also in terms of commissioning, I think is something that needs to be borne in mind. I was interested when Luke was talking about the values there and talking about valuing the workforce. I think parity of esteem is something that absolutely has to be considered in this, and not just in terms of how they are valued, but how they are paid. One of the big concerns that we face at the moment, and I suspect this will not be something that is alien to anybody else in the room, is Scottish Government provides funding to local government or NHS to increase pay. We don't see a consequential increase in terms of the commissioned money that allows us to provide our services and pay our staff more money as a consequence, which creates a pay differential, which means that we either lose staff who leave to go and work for local authorities or the health service because they can get more money, or they simply bypass us and apply to those organisations instead. And that puts services that we provide at risk. And ultimately, if we're not going to be able to provide those services which are commissioned, they're going to have to be provided by somebody else. And when it comes to the social enterprise services that we provide, I'm not sure that local authorities would be in the position or have the institutional knowledge infrastructure understanding to be able to run those services because they've been commissioned for so long. So that potentially creates a challenge. And then that leads to the third point, which is around the recognition of social enterprises as being part of the crisis prevention model, as well as providing a good in and of themselves. By providing those opportunities for individuals and the benefits that come from that, they help to stave off crisis situations for individuals and families. And if you have a system which, through the challenges of commissioning, through the difficulties around parity of esteem, potentially places those services at future risk, then you potentially create crisis situations which either the care service or other statutory services will then have to deal with. So I guess what I'm saying is that these are really important considerations that have to be underpinned within the care service. So I realise it's a framework bill, but these are absolutely important principles and issues that need to be established in order to give some security to the sector.
Thanks, Mark. Want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And absolutely, points that we that we want to hear. That's the kind of thing that it's good to join calls like this and to hear what people like yourself think should be foremost in our minds. Commissioning, yeah, I hear what you're saying about the challenges of consistency of commissioning. There's quite a lot on the go at the moment, looking at ethical commissioning and how ethical commissioning will be a kind of foundation or a cornerstone of the National Care Service to help kind of shape decision making around commissioning and procurement. And I know that the proposal is for local bodies to have to produce a strategic plan setting out their arrangements and visions for how services will be provided, how they'll be commissioned. And at a national level, I guess that's the reason for that is to find a way of stopping the kind of inconsistency that you talk about. In terms of the points that you've made about valuing the workforce, and of course, I know that everyone will agree with you on that. I think those are points that we will probably take a note of and pass to our colleagues in Workforce and Fair Pay Division, and to make sure that those comments are heard. And you'll know that all the narrative around the National Care Service is about trying to prevent people from reaching crisis point and trying to provide, the interventions before people get to that point. So it's really interesting to hear you talking about the recognition of how social enterprises can be a part of that. And again, Luke might want to say more about how that might be achieved through the different opportunities that you have to get involved. So again, that's something that we'll take note of. We'll obviously have notes of everything that's said on this call. I'm sure Georgia will share the video with us as well when it's ready. And these are things that we can feed back. Either we can take on just now, or we can feed back to colleagues that work in the divisions that deal with them. So thanks for all your comments, Mark. Luke, did you want to?
Maybe just to come in a little bit on the back of that, Mark. So the points are well made, and that they are, I think, all of them points that are well recognised as well. But I think the good thing about the approach that we're setting up for opportunities to be involved in ongoing co-design is that I'm just thinking about the connection between your points and those 5 design themes, and actually there are some fairly obvious links across. Actually, the consistency of commissioning, very much linking across to that theme of keeping care support local, and what that then means as well for local and national aspects of the National Care Service. The parity of esteem point, obviously linking very closely to the value of the workforce theme, and the crisis prevention model aspect, I think, probably touches on a couple of themes. There's certainly obviously the link into the keeping care support local thing, but also I think it's important links into information sharing and how that's used to inform care support as well. So I guess I would encourage you to continue to have this conversation with us, and the route to doing it obviously is through that registering through the stakeholder register, identifying and interesting it's those themes, and there will be activities and events that are being planned around them that will give, I think, plenty of opportunity for continuing this conversation and making sure that your points on these aspects are well heard.
Mark, do you want to come back on any of those points at all at this stage, or?
No, I think that was the one thing I did forget to mention as well, and I think it cuts through a lot of the work streams, and I was at the event on the 3rd of October, so I will continue to make these points, but specialism and ensuring that specialism is protected within the work that's done. Obviously, we work directly with autistic individuals, and we pride ourselves on our specialism in that respect. One of the things we would be concerned about is that a national care service may see an erosion of specialism and look to a more generalist approach, which we believe would not necessarily be beneficial. So I'll just leave that on the table for now.
Thanks, Mark. David Kelly from Community Transport Association, do you have a question?
Thanks, Duncan. Yes, I suppose my question is really around to what extent the kind of issue of transport has been raised or addressed so far, and kind of what the anticipated sort of role of the National Care Service in helping people actually access social care services will be. So at CTA across Scotland, we represent over 170 local charities, community groups and social enterprises that are helping people to access all types of services, often in very rural or remote communities where there is no public transport, or for people who have mobility or accessibility needs that means that the public transport that is on offer they can't use, so they need extra support to get out and about, whether that's door-to-door transport or door-through-door transport. And often our members are delivering kind of services and support in a formal or an informal way around that transport. So it might be helping people directly get to transport, to directly get to health and social care, which is a big and common part of what our members do, but also for those not in social care settings, helping people get out and about in their communities and live more independently and live more healthily, and thereby kind of reducing obviously the costs and the pressures on the social care system in general. Lots of members deliver these types of services with strong relationships with health and social care providers and other organisation stakeholders, but lots of them don't, and in the kind of current structure in the NHS, for example, struggle to develop those kind of relationships and get some of the funding that they might need to deliver that. So I suppose we're really interested in is the National Care Service going to be that opportunity to help really align health, social care and transport services so that it's kind of part of a holistic person-centred package, recognising that the way people get about and their ability to get about is not just good for the system and important for the system's outcomes, but also for individuals and their own mental and physical health and well-being.
Thanks, David. Colin or Luke, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you for those points. Your question, will transport be included in that kind of whole, as part of that whole package of holistic person-centred care? Certainly, I hope so. Now, transport I have heard mentioned at a couple of forums that I've been at, and of course we talked to, when I mentioned earlier about thinking about rural areas, islands, etc. It can be a particular issue there for people that may not live very close to other people at all, but it's not just an issue there. Of course, it's an issue in any part of the country. I understand that. I don't think that I've heard an awful lot about transport mentioned, but I think that the way that you phrased it there, the phrasing that you used when you spoke about the challenges that it can raise and about the whole package of care, was a very considered, a very thoughtful way of phrasing it. I suppose what I would say about transport is that we need to consider, so we do need to consider how best to sort of jointly work with other services that may not obviously and immediately fall under the kind of social care umbrella. So I'm thinking about things like housing and policing and homelessness, education, etc. And transport is one of those as well. So well, I can't say right now this is what the intention is with transport. It's very important that we take account of that. So thank you for raising that, and we'll make sure that it's on the table for discussion.
I think that's a really important point to think about integration of services as well, because I think, you know, we certainly know some policy, as soon as we start working in a certain area, we're like, oh, actually that also has an impact on this area and this area. It's all kind of integrated. How do we best marry those things up, really, and just to make sure those services are integrated across the public sector?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate, I think, the phraseology that you use, David, in terms of that holistic, it's not just about delivering the service, but it's about how do people get to that service that they need, or how do people get to the people that need to get that service. I like the way that you phrased that. Yeah, thanks.
I think it is a very, very complex process, I think, but obviously very, very important. So, David, do you want to come back on any of those points at all?
No, that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Colin. I just suppose just to say, if there's anything further on that in terms of either transport issues or rural communities that we could help with, either in terms of engagement or information, then I'm happy to help on that too.
Can I just comment on that? And it was a great point well made, David, and I would really encourage you to bring that expertise to the conversation, and the route way to do that, obviously, as I mentioned before, is through engaging one of those participation route ways, and you know, that theme, kind of large kind of meta theme, if you like, around keeping care support local. Obviously, transportation is a significant part of that conversation, so it'd be great to continue this conversation through that.
Brilliant. I'm happy to make this connection as well. Pervin and Sahelia, do you want to come in with a question?
Hi, sorry, mine was not so much, well, it is a question, I suppose, but also a comment, and linking in with what Colin and David were saying about exclusion and stuff. And I've got a concern about, you know, we work with women who have language, lack of language skills. We've got challenges around marginalisation and exclusion, systemic racism. These are all issues that we have major concerns and we work with for women who currently both work with us but are accessing care services and need kind of, because we're a mental health organisation with some social enterprise work as well. And so I think I've got major concerns around how all of these, because it's another big change for people, and how people can really genuinely be informed, and because, as I say, if language is a major issue, the digital move towards digitalization of so many things is significantly more problematic than for mainstream communities. So how do racially minoritized communities engage? How can they be engaged well, considering the huge amounts of exclusion with all services currently, not just the social care side. So lack of ability to access existing systems and services are just the tip of the iceberg. And with this bill coming in, this is a whole new area for people to understand and get their heads around. I'm just really, really worried about the lack of resources that have historically went into ensuring that racially minoritized communities are really on board with what's happening. So going forward, I think at the moment, Sahelia is being inundated with women experiencing huge amounts of exclusion on all sorts of fronts. And in terms of their mental health and well-being, this is about, the care bill is about prevention a lot of it is about prevention, but we're constantly dealing with women who are already needing support, not getting it. So it's not even prevention, they've went beyond that. But and how can this bill kind of reduce that element of it? So there is a few questions in there. But the main thing is, how is it going to be resourced sufficiently to ensure that people who are already way excluded in terms of services actually be brought on board? And I think I'm not seeing sufficient resourcing and how that could possibly happen. At the moment, I just wanted to put that in there.
Thanks, Pervin. That's a really good point, I think, as well. I think obviously in the spirit of the NCS, in terms of, this very inclusive, collaborative approach, it'd be good to kind of get a steer on, what work might be happening in this area to, empower ethnic minorities and other minority groups as well. If Colin or Luke would like to.
Maybe I could start, Colin, and if there's things you can come off the back of as well. So thanks, there's excellent points and really well made, and I think it's something which we really recognise as well. There's a couple of aspects to it for me. The first one is obviously, through setting up things like the lived experience expert panel and the stakeholder register, it allows us at least to have a sense of what activities required to bring in a breadth of experiences and a breadth of a diversity of experience as well into the co-design process. So I really encourage, wherever possible, if you have members or people who you're working with, to register in that way. But the other part of it, I think, also as well, is the really important role that organisations such as yours play in the process, because you have those trusted relationships. In your case, with the women who you're working with, and we're really mindful of how important it is to make sure that we are able to engage with organisations such as yours and many others to provide opportunities to engage that are suitable and appropriate, and have that kind of appropriate level of wraparound support. And so where that already exists and where you've got those relationships in place, working with organisations such as yours to think about how we can provide opportunities to engage in a meaningful and sensitive way. So, the steps to getting there, I think, would be for an organisational level, obviously, to register on the stakeholder register, and it gives us the opportunity to then talk to you about what those engagements could look like. And also, obviously, please do promote the opportunity at an individual level for people to register via the experience panel. But we've already seen some good examples of where we've had some excellent kind of partnership working with organisations that allow us to create spaces that are suitable and safe and appropriate for people to engage in the conversation. Because the future of the National Care Service will and should reflect the co-design of the people who've been involved in that process. And so the more effort we can put in these early stages to broaden out the participation in the co-design aspect, the more we can to look forward to the solution being one that is appropriate and matches that breadth of requirements and diversity of experience in the future of whatever the solution looks like. So hopefully that helps a bit.
Thanks, Luke. Pervin, do you want to respond to any of that at all?
Yeah, I think my concern is, yes, people can engage through that way, but our sector is so badly resourced and so poor and struggling so much with the work that we are doing. For us to engage in things like this is very, very our ability is very limited because of financial resourcing and capacity resourcing. In terms of the communities we work with, we can encourage them to engage, but I don't think the method is inclusive for them. So even us encouraging them, it does just there hasn't been enough work done to support these communities to engage, I think. I certainly will input to the register further on that. I think this is maybe not the right space to talk in depth about it, but yeah, I think there are still major gaps in terms of making sure there's inclusion of the voice of these marginalised groups.
I think that's a very good point, actually. I think later on in the discussion after the Q&A, we will talk about perhaps the role Social Enterprise Scotland might play. And I think that's a really good example of where we might play a role in kind of making sure those voices are heard, I think. So you can obviously feed back to us about what the most appropriate forums, tools are, that kind of thing as well. So I think, yeah, very good point.
Okay.
Tony, do you want to come in with a question?
Yes, thanks very much. I'm possibly coming at this from maybe a bit more wet behind the ears than you guys, so it's really my only first exposure to the National Care Service proposal. But I suppose just looking at the bill, so you mentioned at the outset, I work within justice within the WISE group. You mentioned at the outset that it's designed with children care and justice in mind, but not specifically with the inclusion of them at this stage. So when does that become, is that just through the consultation that perhaps justice services would be involved within the National Care Service? And second question on from that as well, I suppose, is to what extent is there other sectors and other areas that potentially would fall under the remit of the bill as well? For example, employability.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Yeah, sure, thanks. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, so you're right. Children's and justice services are the two big ones where the decision has still to be taken. And I know with justice, there's an evidence review taking place just now to ensure that when the decision is taken, it's an informed decision. With children's services, the bill requires that a further consultation is carried out. And I think there's also a can't think quite what the right word for it is, but there's some sort of independent research being carried out by a team, an independent team, sorry, is carrying out some research into I think the question that's at the top of it is, and how can we best deliver services to children and young people, whether that's through a National Care Service or not. So I don't know when the decision will be taken. I'm sorry, I can't give you an answer to that on justice services, but what I can say is that the bill's deliberately been left open to allow further research and further independent research and consultation to be done, whether that's through a formal consultation for justice or not, I'm not sure yet, but certainly it's keeping that window open, or keeping that opportunity open for it to happen. Those are the two big things, children's and justice. As you talked about, there might be other sectors that might fall into it or not. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and there are different services, different sectors that there's still additional work being done to do some research and engagement, consultation, etc. before a decision's taken. I think probably as we move towards the end of stage one of the bill, we might have a clearer picture on that, but I don't know exactly when it'll be that we can say whether those justice, children, etc. will be included in the National Care Service. So I think it's just a case that we sort of need to keep communicating that with you as and when there's more to communicate.
Thanks, Colin. Tony, do you want to respond to that?
No, that's grand. Thanks very much. I appreciate that, Colin. Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. And again, it comes back to that point about integration, isn't it? And that kind of holistic approach, which is certainly, not just part of the National Care Service, but part of, I think, all the work we're all doing at the moment. It's really looking at those kind of bigger picture issues. I think Alex Stobart, you saying you have a question? Do you want to ask that just now?
Yeah, thanks very much, Duncan, and thank you to Luke and to Colin for coming on and speaking with members. It's incredibly helpful and valued. I was just going to pick up quickly on the very helpful, I think it was 5 areas for the stakeholder people to register, because as far as I can recall, I have registered, and my DEX is to do with things digital and personal data and service design. And so I thought that the one most relevant was information sharing to improve care support. And could I just ask, is it now the case to wait and be approached, or is there an email to write to enable further interaction? What would you advise, please?
So I'll take that. Thanks, Alex, and thanks for registering. Yes, it's just a question of waiting at the moment. We're still having just a bit of a push at the moment on advertising the opportunity. and the current activity is around setting up initial welcome events. We've been prioritising the welcome events for the lived experience expert panel first. We've nearly got to the end of that process. We've had a few hundred people come through that, just to give you a sense of scale.
Yep.
And we've had the first, I think, of a series of welcome events for people who've registered on the stakeholder register. So you should be aware of the opportunities from comms from that team. If you're not, then please use the email address to get in contact with them that's on the Scottish Government website. And then it is just a question of, once we've got to the end of those kind of series of initial engagements, the internal teams will be made aware of all of those people who've registered an interest against the different themes, and there will be more information coming out about opportunities to engage.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
That's great. So we've still got a few minutes left. So has anybody got any final questions for our Scottish Government colleagues at this stage before we move on to the final part? Feel free to shout out. Obviously, we'll continue the dialogue and you can ask questions after the webinar as well. But if anyone's got any final questions just now, we've had quite a good diversity of questions there. Okay. Yeah, so just a few minutes I thought we could spend on, I suppose, what role Social Enterprise Scotland might play in empowering our members, getting our members' voices heard. Pervin obviously raised a really important point there about ethnic minorities and all the minority voices as well. I think that's something we can certainly look at in terms of how best Social Enterprise Scotland might amplify those voices. But if anybody's got any particular thoughts on, the role we might play in terms of, getting your voices heard in the National Care Service, we'll be happy to take on board any points you've got to make at this point. Obviously, we have webinars and we have consultation responses, which we respond to on behalf of our members, and members have got the opportunity to feed into those, all this kind of stuff. But it's just always trying to find ways to just get the best tools, the most appropriate tools for our members to really engage whatever's most appropriate to them. So if anyone's got any big ideas or small ideas at the moment, feel free to shout. If you don't have any particular ideas at the moment, we can get in touch after. Justin, do you want to come in just there?
Hi there. Yeah, thank you so much. It's just probably quite an obvious one to a lot of people in this area, but the importance of the social prescribing. It's taken sort of a decade or so for that to kind of become an established and recognized, very effective area of health and well-being. Very much prevention orientated, holistic approach, and it's in a way it's kind of running in tandem. I'm sure it's deeply integrated into the NCS, but yeah, it was just to kind of raise that phrase because it didn't come up in the presentation, that social prescribing and the mechanisms of that, the link workers and so on, in terms of the local resources available. I just think it's it's just something really worth putting on the radar again at this point.
Yeah, that's something we can certainly pick up on. I don't know if Colin or Luke's got any particular response to social prescribing at that point.
Apart from just, it will almost inevitably be part of the co-design discussions around keeping care support local. So I think it very much fits in that area there as well. And also there's some overlaps, I think, in terms of information sharing as well, and implications from information sharing.
So anybody else got any particular points? Again, you can continue the questions if you want to, or you can throw out ideas or something like that. It's up to you what you want to say in our final few minutes, or we can just wind up the discussion. That's all fine as well.
I just add the other one that was on my list, which was just engagement with, again, very established organisation, the Digital Health and Care Institute, in case that's not on anybody's radar, because obviously that's a really powerful mechanism for change and innovation, prevention aspects, and not just healthcare, but in terms of lifestyle and so on. So yeah, it's just to, again, put that organisation on people's radar, that they've got obviously funding and calls for development. Tomorrow I'm on, it's a different thing, but tomorrow I'm on a prevention innovation call that's actually from London, but it's really about identifying crisis at an earlier point, very much aligned with the challenges around cost of living. But I think it's that thing of kind of that innovation aspect being so significant, rather than all our sort of siloed organizations kind of working within our current sort of area. There's so much opportunity for that collaboration when it comes to the digital health side of it. I mean, just as one organization, I think they deserve to get that extra bit of steering. Perhaps some of the social enterprises could be looking at collaborating and working with others within digital health.
Yep, absolutely, very good point, actually. Yeah. So we can wrap up just there, unless anybody's got any final points they'd like to make. Any final questions? Again, lots of opportunities to continue getting involved, so it's not just about this webinar. Okay, so we can end it just there. That's great. So thank you so much to our speakers, Colin, Luke, and Andrew. I know obviously everybody's coming along today with your questions. It's been really, really informative, I think. Quite a good mix of questions there as well, and still lots of questions to answer, I'm sure, in future. And we'll, as I said, we'll continue the dialogue. We'll continue the process of liaising with the Scottish Government on behalf of social enterprises. And we'll always look at ways to get social enterprise voices heard in these processes, whether that's, getting you to write a blog for us or whatever it might be. So yeah, so a big thank you to everybody for coming along today, and have a good day.